So today I'm going to talk to you about my NCLEX experience. I did an associate's program for 2 years, and we did the ATI review for 3 days at the end of our conclusion of our graduation. I really liked that review. It was so comprehensive. The book was fantastic. I wish we had it during the semester because every intervention that we ever needed to know for the test was on there. But it was really good. We had a great proctor, and other than it being super duper long, it just was very comprehensive, and it really helped bring back the things that, we don't really think about anymore for like peds. If we're doing med surg, we're not really seeing pediatrics or OB, so it was a great reinforcement. And we got done that, and we were still waiting for our ATI or ATT numbers. And I know in my studying habits, I don't start studying until the week before or 2 weeks before a test. And so I knew there was no way I was just going to relax until, I actually got my ATT number. So I rented 3 books from the school library because I thought it was the cheapest way to go, and, why not? So I got 3 Kaplan books, and they were just like all questions and practice tests. So I started out doing those before I got my ATT number, and I thought that it was, you know, the questions were okay. They were more like nursing school questions, so they were pretty easy and simple, and you could definitely figure it out with narrowing down 2, and then just picking one, and you basically knew it was right. So Kaplan was really easy for me. They were very similar to our nursing school tests, which were insanely hard, but you could figure them out for the most part. So then I got my ATT 2.5 weeks ago, I guess today, and I just picked a date that I thought was conducive to me passing. I knew that I could take it in June like we all wanted to do, but I knew I would not do as well possibly, and I didn't want to set myself up for failure. So I made it for July 5th, which was exactly 2 weeks from the day that I got my ATT, and I began starting to study, and I started reading the ATI book, and it was just too much. Like, there's way too much to go through and relearn and remember, and it's just impossible to do. So I heard of UWorld from all of my nursing school friends, and they were like ranting and raving about the questions. And at this point, it was last Monday, and I had exactly 1 week to study. For $60, I was going to pay for 1 week of 1,915 questions, whatever they give you. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm not paying $60 for 1 week of just this, and okay, great, if I fail, I'm gonna have it for 4 more weeks or 3 more weeks. But I was just like, $60, I really didn't want to spend it, especially because I rented 3 books from the school library thinking that that was like the way to go. But no. So I ended up getting UWorld reluctantly, and I am so thankful that I did. It was fantastic. I did a little under 1,500 questions in 1 week. I would just wake up, like, log right on to my computer and start doing questions. Sorry, I'm back. So I did the 15 under just under 1,500 questions in a week. I would wake up, I would immediately start logging in and doing practice tests, and I really wanted to do like an actual simulation. So I would always do 75 questions, and I'd have it timed just to see like where I'm at. And it really kind of messed with my head because I would never get higher than like a 62 on 75, like a 62%. And it was just frustrating, and I just could not understand why I was getting such low scores, like 55 and 49 one time, and I was just like getting super defeated. But I wanted to simulate real live NCLEX and have that many questions at once to build up my endurance, because God forbid you get 265 and you've only been doing 10 questions at a time, you're going to fatigue and just start clicking away. So I did that for probably 4 or 5 days out of that week, and I finally was like, there's no point to this. Like, I'm wasting like hours at a time doing these 75 questions, and I'm just like clicking, and just becoming more frustrated with my score. So then I started breaking it down and doing like 15 questions at a time and 25 questions at a time. And then I would drop down to 10 questions. And I just saw like a drastic improvement. My stamina was already there from doing all those 75 questions. And I just felt like I was retaining the rationales better after the test. And the UWorld rationales are so fantastic. I could not believe how thorough they were and just how perfect that they were. So I did I did the UWorld, and I was like, okay, it's the day before. It was 4th of July, and everyone says you're not supposed to study the day before your NCLEX. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can do whatever you want. Whatever you feel most comfortable doing is what you need to do for yourself. You know how to feel, and you know when you're prepared enough. And I knew in my head I was not prepared enough. I skimmed the ATI book the week before and did Kaplan questions, and I knew I was not getting anywhere. And so I decided that I was going to study and do questions the night before and the day before my test. So I started out doing some UWorld questions, and then I went through ATI one last time and just did like things that my school didn't go over, but the proctor for ATI really stressed, like Addison's disease, Cushing's disease. I went through a little bit of OB and peds, because she said that Kawasaki's and tetralogy of flow was definitely going to be on there, which it wasn't, for me at least. So I wanted to make sure that I just had it in my head, those last couple things that I just wanted to review. I did go through the med list that they gave us too. It's like on a plain piece of paper, just important meds to know for the NCLEX. I just skimmed those, and skimmed. Like I'm a skimmer. I don't really like to read, especially for nursing school stuff. I never read, but I just knew that I at least had to see it once more before I took my test. And so then that night I did more UWorld questions just on my phone, on my app, so that I was laying in bed, and I just knew that I just needed to do a little bit more to prepare. So I did just a couple more, and I probably shut everything down by like 9 p.m. And that was from studying at like 9 a.m. So I did do almost a full day, got taking breaks, doing more, taking breaks, doing more. And I still didn't feel good, but I set my alarm for 5:45. My test was at 8 o'clock. And I left my house at like 6:15 or 6:12. I'm really weird with numbers like that. 6:12 probably. And I made it down there at 6:45. And I parked right in the front. I was like, oh yes, I got a meter right in the front. This is perfect. I don't have to park in any other parking lot. I brought quarters with me because I was like, yay, if it's like an old school meter, and it was. So at like 7:10, I got out of my car and I went to put in the quarters in the meter, and it only gave me up to 15 minutes, and I was like, what is going on? Well, then I looked and saw that they were only up to an hour, and one was like up to 15 minutes, of course, where I parked. So I was like, oh my god, now I have to move, I have to find parking, it's going to be all taken, it's 7:20, what am I going to do? So I literally just went right around the corner and parked at another meter that was actually one where you insert your credit card, and I was good to go. I parked, I read the sign, make sure I wasn't going to come out and my car would be towed. I paid for the full it was like up to 10 hours, so I paid for the full 10 hours that I was allowed, just in case I was there for the 6 hours. I wanted to cover myself. And I went in, and the door, they were completely locked. The people weren't even there yet. The lady walked by at 7:25, and she's like, "We don't open till 7:30, guys." And there was three of us staying there. We're like, "Yeah, we know. We're just ready to come in." So we waited until exactly 7:30. We went in. We were giving the Pearson things to read again, just the rules, and you just want to refresh yourself with those. And then it was time, and I did my hand scan a couple times. I asked for earplugs because that's kind of how I studied at home, with like big giant earmuffs. And like first semester before I got the earmuffs, I would use earplugs. So I knew that that was my thing. I never used earplugs during an exam, but we had those white noise machines, and I'm a firm believer that they work because I just kind of zoned out and, did my thing. But I knew I wanted earplugs for the NCLEX, just to make sure that I was not distracted by anything. And you start, and I heard like my heartbeat through my, the earplugs. Like I just was like, oh my gosh. So I took a deep breath, and I did it, and I was going through, and I was like, my first question, I was like, oh no, this is terrible. So I started freaking out a little bit more, and went through, and finally I was like at 30, and I was like, all right, I really got to be strong these next 30, because on the website it says they start grading you at 60. So I wanted to make sure that I was strong enough, and, I was taking my time and not rushing through, because I looked at the clock and I got through 30. I started at 7:45, and I looked at the clock and it was like 8:10. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like zipping through these like nobody's business. And the reason why I was zipping through them was because I could narrow every single one down to two, like maybe except one or two, but every single one you could narrow it down. I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is so easy. I'm narrowing it down. And then you have to pick between the two, and you're like, oh no, like, what are we going to do? Like, I don't know which one to pick. You try and narrow it down as best as you can, and you just have to commit and click and go to the next one. And for a lot of them, that's what I did. And then I got some really easy ones. I'm like, oh no, I'm doing bad. Like, this was so easy. And, you can totally tell when you're getting one wrong, because it really drops you down and it tries to pick you back up. So I guess for those ones I got, right for the most part. And then at 60, I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I'm here to do my thing. Like, let me just see what they give me next. And then I was getting like a ton of priority questions, and I just knew, I was like, this is going nowhere good. It was like, what is the sky? Is it blue or blue? And you just did not know what to pick. And again, you could narrow it down to the two, but at some point you're just like, okay, go with the ABCs and decide from there. And if you can't, go with pain, because that's pretty bad too, acute pain. So if there's no ABCs, go with that. And I just really tried to make a really, really good educated guess. And even though it was like educated, I just was guessing. So I was not feeling very confident. And then I wasn't looking at like my questions, like at that time, how many I had, but then I just kind of glanced in the corner, and it was at 72. And again, like, more priority. So I clicked more, and I was like, please do not let this shut off at 75. There's no way I passed yet. Like, I just knew I was like in for it, and was going to get at least 100, just because I hadn't shown my ability yet. I didn't think that I was considered like safe. But it shut off at 75, and I just kind of sat there. I was like, no way that is done that quick. And I looked at the clock, and I was like, it's literally like 9 o'clock. And I was like, that was an hour and 15 minutes. And that's not even including the pre little question things. And I, of course, like read through them, and I was like, oh, okay, let me just make sure I'm doing all these questions right. So I kind of sat there, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, I just failed this thing. my mind is mush. It was so hard. It was ridiculous. So I did the exit survey. I raised my hand and I just like walked out. The security guard was so nice. He's like, "You're done so quick." And I was just like, "Yeah, it's not a good thing for me." And I saw like another girl that was in there and she's like, "I got so many select all to apply. I totally passed." It shut off at 75 for her. And I was like, "I got no select all apply." I got like under 8, whatever. I don't even know the number. It was definitely not what, on all nurses. Somebody had like 44 select all that apply or like 23. I'm like, yeah, it was definitely under 10 for me. What I did have a lot was, it was literally like 3/4 select all that apply. It felt like, at least to me. Every other one or multiples in a row was select all that apply. I could not believe it. Um, so I walked out and I just sat in my car. I called my friend who was taking it later that day, and I knew I shouldn't have because I didn't want to freak her out, but I just had like this ball of emotion, and I just, come here, Pick. Come here, Pick. Sorry. Um, so yeah, I was just in a ball of emotion, and I just had to vent to her and be like, "Oh my God, it was the worst thing ever." And it like, when you think about it and you're in there, it's the worst thing ever. Like, I really thought it was the hardest thing I've ever taken. It was nothing like any nursing school test that I had ever taken, because you could always narrow those down and you knew exactly what you had to study to pass. And this was not like that. You knew you had to study 2 or 4 years worth of stuff, and that's just impossible. There was stuff on there that I'd never even heard of, that maybe in, the West Coast they use, but we don't use it here on the East Coast. And I just, I knew that I failed. I knew in my heart, I was like, there's no way I pass with that. So I went on All Nurses and I Googled, and I was trying to like see anybody fail at 75 and what kind of questions that they had, and you know who passed at 75 but had a lot of priority questions. And there's no way to know what gets a candidate to pass. Like, yeah, you obviously are above that line, and you are considered safe and you know enough to be an entry level nurse. But when you're doing it and you're getting these questions that aren't really what but you're just guessing, you just figure, okay, well, I gotta move on at some point. And that's what I did. So in my head, I thought that I failed, and I was like, there is no way I can wait until 48 hours to get my results. There's no way. I was going insane. I was like miserable. I came home, I went to Target, I cleaned my room. I like just went through my ATI book trying to like figure out like, okay, where was all this stuff on the test? You're in school for 2 or 4 years and you study so much, and it shuts off at 75. You're like, that's not fair. I have so much more in this head of mine to like get out. So you just go through all these emotions and you feel like crap, and you just feel devastated. So I decided I was going to do the Pearson V trick, and I read on All Nurses like, don't do it, and then like 500 other posts say, do it, do it, do it. It's so accurate. So I texted my sister, who I knew has 1,000 gift cards that have no money on them. So I tried it, and I got the good pop-up, and I was like, oh my gosh, alright, there's like a little bit of relief, but not really, because it was only like 2 hours after. So I was like, alright, I'll do it again later, see if it's the same pop-up. I met my friend who also did her test, but after me, and she did it and got the good pop-up, and she was done in 94 questions, which I was like, that is so much better than getting kicked off at 75, because at least then you're like, I felt like that was more of an indicator that you passed versus somebody that just got shut off at 75 but really felt like they failed. So I just kind of went with it. We talked it out. We like basically cried together and said how horrible it was, and then I did it again, and I put in the wrong expiration date. Like, it was ending like July 16. Well, that's this month, so of course it declined it and was like, your valid, your expiration date was invalid. So I was like, oh my god, I failed. Like, that's the bad pop up. I can't believe it changed. And then I read it, and then I put in like a different expiration date, and it went through again for a good pop up. So I was like, all right, cool. So let me just see if, that's that. I'm not going to mess with it again. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I just went to bed, woke up the next morning, again, cleaned more of my room, tried to clean some of my books out, and like just tried to keep busy. And I randomly checked well, I'm in New Jersey, so the New Jersey Board of Nursing, and I typed in my last name, and when I did that, the day prior, and in the weeks prior, it would just say pending. So finally I did it, and my license number was up, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh, like I triple checked it, I like clicked on it, and then it said error, and I was like, oh my gosh, but the site had been up on my computer, so I knew I just probably needed to refresh it. So that's what I did, and it came back up, and it was still there, and it said active, and I had my license number. So then I texted my friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, my license number. I sent them a picture of it, and I typed in my friend's name, and her was on there, so we had both passed. And I sent that to her too, and then she had a check, and then she cried, and I cried, and we talked on the phone, and it was just like, there's no way, I can't even believe that we both passed. Like, I can't believe I passed as hard as I thought that it was. I clearly am a good guesser, and, I knew enough, and, all the emotions come forward, and you just can't believe that it's true. And what's funny was that our Board of Nursing results and license were up before the quick results were. So my quick results just became available yesterday, and I was like, I'm not gonna pay $8 just to see that those passwords, because I already got my license number. So that was cool that our Board of Nursing just so happened to have our stuff like put on immediately, and that we are can get our quick results available here in New Jersey, because I know some states you can't, and I know some states you have to wait until the board sends you your actual license. And so I'm very thankful for New Jersey that they were super quick with our stuff, and it made things so much easier, because it's literally the worst time after you take your test, and you have all this self-doubt, and you feel like your world is ending, and you just have all these emotions, and your head hurts because you were just thinking for, well, in my case, an hour, like really hard, and just confusing yourself, and you felt literally lost. Like, I felt like all that hard work that I put in came down to one test, and you either pass it or you don't. And what the good thing is, though, is it's not like nursing school, at least my nursing school, where you failed one test and you had to withdraw, or you knew you were going to fail. There was very little chance to come back from failing a test. But with NCLEX, you can take it again. You wait 45 days, re-register, and you take it again. And no one ever knows that you failed it, and or that you took 265 questions, 95 questions, or 75 questions. The only thing that matters is that you have those two perfect little letters after your last name as a registered nurse. So, in conclusion, because it's a really long video, I definitely recommend UWorld. It was fantastic. I'm very thankful that I got that, and I listened to my friends and didn't worry about the $60. I loved that. Kaplan, I mean, if you are at your local library or your school library and they have the books, you can get them. They're not bad. The questions are just kind of simple and not as thorough and geared towards NCLEX as I thought the UWorld was. And especially the UWorld website, it was literally, even the color, I think it was blue, it was identical to the NCLEX. So that kind of helps you go through and, really simulate an actual NCLEX experience, which is really helpful, because I never felt fatigued at all. I was shocked that I felt so good after 75. I was like, I can keep going, give me more, give me more. So, you just keep going and use what you think is going to work for you. And at this point, don't worry about money, because you're going to get it back at some point, and you've probably spent more on less. So if you're skeptical about spending $60 on a week's worth of questions, don't. Just get it and do them, and do as many as you can. And don't worry about, I kind of made it like, oh, I need to do all 1900 questions to get my money's worth. No, don't do it like that, because then you're missing the point. You're just going through them to get them done, to get your money's worth. Do them to learn and to understand the rationales, and really hone in on things that your school didn't cover that maybe you heard from other people that is definitely on there. And in reality, I'll give you this advice. Everything that they said, oh, it's definitely on there, it's definitely on there. I had one thing that was definitely on there. And again, that was something my school didn't go over, which was like Addison's and, you know, things like that that we didn't learn, but I knew I needed to relearn or, familiarize myself with, because I knew I wasn't going to relearn all these disorders that my school didn't go over, that our proctor for ATI said that they were definitely on there. So just be smart, and you already made it through nursing school, so you just need to keep going and get it done. And you will. And if I thought that I failed at 75 and I passed, everybody can pass, because I thought it was the hardest thing ever. So before my dog jumps up on the table or my dresser again, I'm gonna go. So thanks everybody, and good luck.